presentation on dealing with the unexpected. So hello again, and thank you, Lori, thank you, Edry, thank you, Shonda, and thank you, Barbara, for those highly informative. Do you know, people, how much you would have to pay to get this information if you were going to a class or something? So I hope that you've, like she said, you've been taking notes, and this will be posted on my YouTube channel, Carolyn Sebron on YouTube, under oh gosh, informational. There's a whole informational section. Anyway, I'm going to talk just briefly about, and get your questions ready. Hello to the people on Facebook. I see you there. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. I have another computer over here that I'm monitoring. I'm finally figuring out the tech stuff. So I'm going to talk about dealing with the unexpected. You know, we are voice users, whether we're singers or speakers. We use voices in our respective professions, and ultimately, using your voice in front of a group of people, whether in a music studio, a classroom, in houses of worship, or even an auditorium, we're voice users. And it may be that antsy group of middle schoolers or a group of people who expect to be inspired or transported and transformed by your words. All of it on some level is a type of presentation or performance. So, coping with the unexpected. Have you ever seen somebody walk out on stage to give a talk? They're shifting through their papers, they mumble, they seem lost, not a lot of clarity. And maybe after a while, they seem to find themselves, and actually, what they have to say is really interesting and engaging, and you just wish they had gotten there sooner. Stage anticipation or stage fright. So, the best course of action for dealing with those kinds of things is preparation and practice. Les Brown, who is a very well known motivational speaker, at least to me, in one of his talks said, people say practice makes perfect. And he says, no, practice makes improvement. So we're always in a state of improvement. We're always in a state of getting more self confidence. And it depends also on the situation. Usually we're more at ease if it's a classroom size. If it's 1,000 or more people, we may be like, oh my God, there are 1,000 or more people here. But some people have problems or stage, anxiety when it's just a small room of people. So at the very end of this, I'm going to give you two techniques to help you with dealing with that and dealing with the unexpected. So for self-confidence, we talk about preparation, knowing your topic, knowing your audience, practice, and setting a tone. What is your presentation style? Is it quiet? Is it intimate? Do you prefer to be behind the lectern presenting? Is it bombastic, conversational, or impersonal or formal? The larger the space, we often feel we have to fill that space with sound, and so we may push our voices. So, however, depending on your purpose, a small yet clear and direct delivery can be even more effective. You make people lean in. So it can be interactive too, call and response. We hear that often in the church, or it can be a talk and then a Q&A. So you have your set lecture and then you engage the audience afterwards. Or it can be a straight lecture and you just do your thing and then you walk off. So as you discover more about your preferred presenting style, you may be helped by small victories, and that comes through practice. If you have a big lecture or presentation coming up, have a run through, two or three perhaps, to practice learning your pacing and to get over any challenges you may have with diction, or you may realize that what you have on is not necessarily comfortable. This, especially if you are new at public speaking, because speaking in public is also a performance. Making an outline, practicing your speech, practice the timing and the pacing, record yourself for self evaluation, or have someone who can observe and offer a helpful critique. It can also be useful. Why is this? Well, and so what we have many mannerisms, and that we may use when a pause or even silence might be appropriate. Practicing in front of a mirror, check for visual signals. For instance, are you squinting? Do you need to change your glasses because the light is reflecting off of your glasses? Um, or is your posture, does that make is your posture communicating something that's contrary to the message that you're delivering, you know? So there's a mannerism. So we want to see your face. Try not to get stuck in your notes. The other reason, the sound can get lost instead of going outward into the classroom or to the audience, especially if you're working acoustically. Our heads are the direction or the megaphone for the sound to travel. If I turn this way, the sound is going that way. If I turn this way, the sound is going that way. So this way, it's straight on to my microphone here in my palatial villa. And the sound is much more clear and direct. The other thing is our emotions. Usually, negativity can interfere with our presentation. And when we get emotional, our voices can get unsteady. They can get tense. Lori and Barbara were talking about muscle tension, dysphonia, and they can even disappear. In other words, we can lose our voice. And I'll just tell you this really brief story. Where I live, there used to be a little coffee shop, and one day I went in there to get coffee, and this man walked up to me, and I'd never seen him before, and he was just like railing away at me, and I realized there was something wrong. And about a year or so later, I was down at the Veterans Hospital doing a program down on 23rd Street. And they said, okay, we're going to take you up to the floor. And we walked into the ward and the door locked behind us. I said, why? Why is the door locked? And they said, well, this is the psychology ward. I was like, oh. So we go to the visitor room. And who was the person? One of the first people that walked into the room was this man. I remembered him and I lost my voice. It was only temporarily, but your emotions can set these things into action. The other thing, and I'm going to talk about three other things. The critical voice. Often we're scanning a room while we're speaking. We're looking to see which students are on their cell phones or a reassurance from a colleague in a meeting. And in doing so, we can misinterpret what we're seeing. A frown, a shifting in the seat, or even someone getting up and walking out could be interpreted in a negative way and can add to our anticipatory delivery stress. Our critical voice dives in with negative critiques. You're losing your audience, you're tanking, throw in the towel, or even worse. And when something like this happens, you have to get back to what I call neutral. If you are nervous, emotions and grief, things happen. And they can happen just before you walk out to give your presentation or go into a classroom, or something happens in the classroom. And talking about immediate coping strategies, I want to give those to you now. And for long-term emotional distress and whatnot, there is nothing wrong with speaking to a counselor, a social worker, or a medical professional. So if you're having voice problems, the thing you want to do first is get to an ENT. And if it's not something that's physical, it might be something that some pent up tension, physical tension, and you were given some exercises for massages under your chin and your neck, etc. But also, you may need to just talk some issues out. So I'm going to share my screen now with the slides that I cooked up. We're very, very basic, but just to give you some guidelines. So coping with the unexpected. The things to consider is anticipation can be cause for worry. We call it stage fright sometimes. We worry about what could happen, and then we worry about what actually does happen. What is within your control under what actually does happen, and what is a surprise. So the things to consider, preparation is all. If you're giving a sermon, if you're giving a speech, if you're going into the classroom for the first time, preparation is all. So you organize and you practice. And then to build your self-confidence in terms of speaking, preparation, knowing your topic, knowing your audience. If you're going to be speaking to kids in junior high, you're not going to speak to them the same way you would kids in a college class. And I say kids because I'm an older person. And then you set the tone. You have to set the tone. Is it going to be informal? Will people be able to interrupt you and this kind of thing? And again, practicing. I can't emphasize that word enough, because the more you practice, the more confident you are, the more command you have over what you're doing. And then finally, managing the critical voice. What is the critical voice? It's usually negative, shows up just before you're going to execute an important task, slows you down and stops you cold in your tracks. Now, I don't know about you, but this happened to me. Why did that happen? And all of a sudden, you're off task. So ignoring the critical voice, and this is important, ignoring the critical voice does not make it go away. It actually makes it more insistent. It's like a little kid, mommy, 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 and you go finally yes. And it's like, oh, I just want to talk to you. So how do you manage the critical voice? You acknowledge its presence, but not the criticism. Now, I'm getting this from a book called Power Performance for Singers, and I have the reference at the end. But I remember I would be on stage getting ready to sing, and it was like, maybe a little part where I wasn't exactly super comfortable with it. And this voice would say, "You're not going to make that note." And I thought, oh my God, am I cracking up here? Until I spoke to a colleague and said, that happens to me too. Guess what? That's your critical voice. You acknowledge its presence. I hear you, but not the criticism. So how do you deal with that? You postpone attention. I even gave my critical voice a name. I called her Sally. Sally, I'm busy now. I'll deal with you later. Go sit in the corner because I have to sing or speak or whatever. And then you can use exercises to regroup and refocus, because depending on the situation, especially if there's a lot going on, say in the classroom, maybe you're being evaluated that day, and that's the day that the class really decides to show how lovely they are, then you have to refocus. So even though there may be turmoil, you have to regroup and refocus. And I'm going to give you an exercise to help you do that. You return to neutral. So there's visual focus and placement. We do that if we're not as comfortable looking people in the eye, if we're getting that feedback from them, they're shifting, they're on their phones, they're frowning. We don't know why they're frowning. It may not have anything to do with us. But if we see that while we're doing our presentation, we may think that they're making a judgment call about us. So if you have difficulty and you're still learning how to cope in a presentation, there's visual focus and placement, and then there are breathing exercises. So the visual focus, consider a triangle, and you are at the 90-degree, or is that 45 angle going out. Okay, that is going to be your focus. You're not going to turn to the side and look into the wings or look out the window. You're not going to turn this way, because that's also communicating to your audience either you're scared of us, or you don't think that much of us, or you're ignoring us. It could be any of those. But that may not be what you mean, but that's what's being communicated. So think of that triangle. And people use this, singers use this also in performance. So that major triangle going out. And if you do have difficulty looking people in the eye, depending on the room, look over their heads and pick a point, see where my cursor is, dead center on this line at the back of the room, and talk to that spot. Usually there's a clock on the back of the room in classrooms or in lecture halls. So you could pick that. Now, if the audience is going up, it's I forget what that's called, not proscenium, but an amphitheater style. You might want to pick a spot parallel to your line of sight, but not directly at one of your attendees. And that will help you as you grow with your visual focus. The other thing I want to give you is a breathing exercise. 4, 7, 8. So let's just say, oh my gosh, my paper's in the wrong place. As you recollect yourself and you want to refocus and reconnect, you inhale on 4, inhale, 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 inhale. You hold for 7 beats, and then you release on 8 beats. And you do that a couple of times, and it returns your pulse. It helps to lower your pulse. It helps to lower the temperature of your emotions, and then you can go on and do what it is that you have to do. I got this from the Actors Fund workshop on stress, which was very good. So I leave you with those two things. I will also say that if you are having some issues, as my colleagues have said, um, there's nothing better than getting a medical checkup. Okay, include that as part of, especially if you're a voice user, include that as part of your yearly physical, because our voices are our professions. And if you need to do work, speech wise, a speech therapist is worth a visit or two, or three or four, depending on what your needs are. And if you want to learn about singing and sustaining, especially if that's part of your work, then I also have the contact information for my colleagues here. These are some resources that you might want to get in terms of learning how to deal with that critical voice. These books are geared for singers, but it includes information on how to deal with the critical voice. Then here are the contacts. I'll leave this up on the screen for a moment if you want to take a screenshot. And we're getting ready for your questions and answers. So, panel, if you would get ready, I'm going to stop sharing the screen now, and I'm going to go to the chat and see if we have any questions. Anyone?
Carolyn, before we get to that, I just wanted to add something that nobody covered. That is, if you are swallowing something like tea, it does not get to your vocal folds. I have so many students who think if they will drink hot tea, it will make their vocal folds get, it does not, because the vocal folds close, the false vocal folds close, the epithelium comes over, the epiglottis, sorry, comes over and sews everything up like a purse, and the food or the whatever slips down into your stomach. If you choke, that's when it got past your epiglottis, and that would be bad. We don't do that. And the other thing is, you can do some things. There's some great research I just read. There are some things you can do if you've got a slight hoarseness, besides just steaming. You can use some semi-occluded vocal tract exercises and pair those with 5 to 10 minutes of mindfulness, and then rinse and repeat. Do it over and over again. And in this particular paper I read, the person got rid of their slight hoarseness in less than 48 hours.
And
So,
I think the 478 exercise in the immediate is also helpful, because sometimes we start to panic when what we really need to do is just
mhm.
slow down and breathe. It's so much that you've talked about today has been about the breath. And as speakers, speakers sometimes they just breathe from like the chest up. And then when they run out of air, then they put the pressure on because they're squeezing, you know? So there was a question here. What causes ulcers? I'm assuming on the vocal folds.
Oh, it just prolonged excessive harsh use. It's like spraining an ankle. And also I think reflux after a long period of time can also cause ulcers. I believe they explain that in the video. So if you go ahead and download the PDF, and it'll take you to that video and you can watch that whole thing, and it gives more detailed explanation of the causes of that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if there's anybody over here on Facebook. My other
There
computer
was a
just
question
timed
on
out.
Facebook, yes.
Um, okay, let's see. Now I'm not seeing it, so if you see it, you tell.
Yes. And
Somebody on Facebook asked about how to do straw phonation
right.
correctly.
Says,
Oh
can you
And
yeah.
I
go
think
into
that
more detail describing the mouth position of the straw SOVTs, i.e., is the straw between the teeth or not? Is there space or no space on the sides of the mouth around the straw? Are lips relaxed or tightly pursed?
I would say that Edri's the person to answer that one.
I was gonna say, yeah. You're
Edri, you're
muted.
muted. You're muted,
You're
Edri.
muted, Edri.
There you go. My husband likes to mute me, so, he would have loved that. She's talking and I can't hear, but he would pretend that he could hear it. So yeah, the goal is always relax. So we don't want any tight lips. We don't want any tightness in the throat and the mouth area. Yes, you're more like doing a hum. So everything's open inside the mouth and nicely around these. So it'd be between the teeth. I mean, you're not going to clench down. Any kind of clenching is a no. Because again, when that happens, we're bringing in tension. And what we don't want is the tension. You shouldn't feel any effort really here at all. The other, a lot of people do have problems, especially if they have muscle tension dysphonia to begin with. And that was brought up I think Barbara brought that up. And so when they're using the straw, some of my clients, I'm having to take them off the straw and get them into a v, which we've done so much in classical music, with a V buzz, v, to get that voice a little bit more forward and off of the throat, if that makes sense. So we want to make sure that there's not effort here. The whole idea, this is used therapeutically for rehabilitating the injured voice. So we're not wanting to have any kind of tension that's adding to the folds and level of the folds. We want to bring the resistance to it by blowing. If you could also bring into it, I've got a cup here, and this might be helpful to a lot of people to keep the air flowing. Putting the straw in the water here, just about, an inch down. Let me bring that up so that you guys can see it. Can you all see it? Mm-hmm. And blow into it. Well, that was really bad. I had it too full. Just went all over my computer. Oh, that's okay. I'll back up a little bit. So doing the phonation through the straw, but letting a visual appear for you, because most people, if they're really tense, they're not going to have the airflow that you want during the straw phonation. So let's do this again. And make sure that it's consistent. If you saw in the beginning, right before I started there, I didn't have the consistency. I was mainly worried about it jumping all over the place. But you don't want to be blowing it up. So about an inch, half an inch into the water. And a consistency with the bubbles, if you will. You don't want anything that would, I'll turn this way and go, that has a lot of tension in my throat, a lot of muscle action here that you don't need. When I did that, and it was also very way back in the back part of the throat. Mm-hmm. So if you're having problems with getting the optimal feeling, if you will, the freedom in the vocal tract, because this is closing the vocal tract in the semi-occluded vocal tract exercise. So we're closing off a little bit of that space when we're doing this exercise, but more so like a hum or a buzz, because when we do it's really difficult for us to go. We can't do that in the back of our throats, right? If we're trying to do a buzz, it won't happen. If we're using the muscles back here, it just won't happen. So for those that are not capable of getting that freedom with the straw, then I resort to that V buzz. I wish I had said that earlier, which will give them that frontal resonance, if you will, that feeling, and also that relaxation in the throat. They don't feel that tension that they were feeling with the straw, because with the straw at times, depending on the person, again, they're putting too much effort in it and it's defeating the purpose, and we don't want that. So hopefully that answered the question.
Does size matter?
I prefer the 5 millimeter. I know that some people have a little bit larger. This is what some of my SLP friends use, the size 5 millimeter size. It's in between what you would get at Walmart, the Bindi one at Walmart, and the little coffee stir at McDonald's. And it just gives you that resistance that is, I feel, is perfect for the singer. But I mean, some of my colleagues prefer different sizes, a little bit larger,
Yeah.
in which case, if you can't find one that's 5 millimeter, you can always, you know, put a little resistance by closing off a little bit with
Mhm.
that. Um, but again, I think it's more with somebody who is used to using the straw. But
You can also get metal straws as well, so you can be more environmentally
that's
compatible.
true,
And
but they're a little bit more larger
they're
hole.
usually larger. Uh,
Yeah.
Two things. Lita Scarce, who I did my internship with at the Duke Voice Center, swears by the stir straws, but
Hmm.
she's working with vocal issues. So it's because when you have that much resistance, it helps the vocal folds to vibrate better. That's a whole thing.
Right.
That's why it works. And the other thing is don't drive and use a straw,
Oh God.
because a woman was driving with a metal straw in her mouth and she had an accident and it killed her. I saw that here in the paper in Oklahoma and I went, oh my God. So ever since then, I've told my students, don't use the straw when you're driving. However, I warm up on the way to church by doing a v or a v.
Yep.
I do that to warm up on the way to church. That's safe,
I would
but
say
don't use a straw.
don't walk in
And
the
it's
house with a straw, because if for
yeah,
some reason you
exactly. But you know,
drop
it's
it in
been
the sink.
around for years. I mean, we've
Yeah.
been doing that since, well, since I can ever remember, you know, from my very first voice lesson.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah.
that's been around long before we heard of the straw. And I think, I mean, it really depends on the person. If they're able to do it properly, then, and not affect any, you know, tension at the level of the folds and in the throat, then, you know, good for you. But
And
again, like you're going in your car, you don't want to have that. Oh my gosh, I've never. Oh my,
Okay,
that
I have another
wow.
question for the panel. You talked about offsets and onsets, and can we talk a little bit about in terms of speaking vocal fry, because you know that kind of, I get that because I was always told be quiet, so I get this kind of how are you doing, how's everything, and it kind of goes. So can you talk about that in terms of the voice, and then the other question is, would voice lessons be helpful for a speaker?
oh yes.
Ooh, yes.
That's the last part, but the first part.
I try to train my singers not to use vocal fry because it's annoying. And that's the whole reason. It's also, some doctors think that it is also abusive. But if you use vocal fry as a tool to help somebody find their chest voice, for example, and you do it softly or quietly, like Edry was saying, it's not going to do harm. But that when people are talking and they go down like this, they're also pressing on
But for
their vocal folds. Yeah.
someone who's a regular speaker, if they came to your studio and they said, "But you know, this is who I am," and what would be the defense for allowing them to continue doing that if it's a consistent habit, because it's not healthy, Dr. Hicks?
Sometimes we confuse what's natural with what's habitual. So again, showing the consequences and what can happen for prolonged vocal fry, I would hope would be enough justification to adjust that placement so that you can make what is actually natural the habit. Okay, but it takes a minute to get into the psyche and get them to change the perception of how they perceive their own voices.
I
And
agree.
I use the I'm sorry, the rainbow bridge or whatever that's called. There's exercises you can find online that help people learn, that have all of the consonants and vowels and everything else in them. And then I have them read them and not do it at the end of the sentence.
Hmm.
And that makes them aware of it. And I'm sorry, Shonda, you had your hand up first.
It's okay. I just wanted to talk about vocal fry as being a trendy thing. It's very trendy, and a lot of younger singers. I know that it's problematic all around, but a lot of young, because they're seeing a lot of their reality show personalities and TV show personalities. They speak with that vocal fry, especially at the end of phrases.
Yeah.
They right. I mean, because that's how, and so going back to what Dr. Hicks said, you know, that's natural. Well, actually, it's not, and they're copying. So be careful with your modeling too, students. That's a whole other conversation. But I found that it's trendy.
It is trendy. And I also think that ever since texting became so popular, people aren't using the phone as much to speak. And so they're not using their voices enough. And I mean, that's when I noticed that trend happening. And there's not one client that has come to me with speaking in a vocal fry who has not complained about vocal fatigue.
So here's another question. In terms of, I'm going to say chemicals, smoking. If someone's a speaker, this panel is basically we're addressing speaking today, teaching, things like that. Can you talk about the usefulness? I shouldn't even use that word. The effects of smoking on the speaking voice, and the second part would be for people to find their modal speaking voice, and someone can define that.
Well, the smoking, one of the worst things it can do and does is the Rinke's edema, that it causes that swelling of the vocal fold, the top layer of the lamina propria of the vocal fold. It looks really gross, and I should have included a picture, but it's one of the things that happens very common with smokers, and they get that gravelly sound because of the vocal folds not meeting, as Dr. Hicks was talking about.
And dryness.
And dry, yeah, absolutely.
So how does one find their what's called the modal voice? So if I came in, I was talking like this, like, "Hello, everybody, how are you doing?" And you would say to me, what?
I would put you on that buzz and say, do a few of those and now speak from that place or with the straw. Okay, here's my voice, and I'm no longer in that fry place. Or yes,
Or yum, yum, yum.
yum, yum, yum.
Yeah.
Or mom, mom.
Mother made marmalade.
And sometimes, we're accused of being affected because our voices are a different kind of way. But in terms of longevity, it's probably a healthy thing to do. Now, here's a question. It says, thanks so much for the talks. I have a question off topic, maybe. Can you tell me the considerations to have with a student that had male to female feminization surgery?
There's actually a lot of research coming out right now. Emerald Leslie in Washington did her dissertation on it, and there's someone just published a book on it as well. So there's a lot of research coming out right now. I would suggest doing just a little bit of research, and you will certainly find that. Emerald Leslie also is part of a Facebook group. There's a Facebook group that talks about that as well. So if you have that going on in your studio, I suggest that you get in touch with the people that I had. One of the students in my pedagogy class, her sister is in fact in that situation, and she was working with her as part of her pedagogy project, and I got her in touch with Emerald.
Wow.
And then I also got her in touch with the Facebook group that deals with that, and then she found some of the writings on her own.
I would say, in addition to that, Abital, I think, writes about it in his book on The Voice, about transitioning. For women that are transitioning to male, the consideration is once you start the hormones, that's it. Your voice is going to drop, period. And there's no going back. So one needs to consider those things that may seem minor, but it also deals with a challenge to one's identity in terms of personality and how you have gone through life before. So I hope that answers the question. Dr. Hicks, you have a comment.
Yeah, I've been to maybe one or two workshops on this, and I do recall that that laryngeal recalibration was a big thing, and paying attention to the position of the larynx. as well as getting into the falsetto, much more into the falsetto, and kind of just living theirs were my takeaways from those workshops. So I'm glad to hear
Right.
that published works out now
Mm,
on the subject.
mm,
Yeah, and
And
it's also working and transitioning registration. So
Yes.
it's we're dealing with the voice and the person, the unique person, just as we would with any singer as they're going through, as a male going through
Voice
puberty,
change.
a boy
very
mhm.
through
similar.
puberty. Another person that has a lot of knowledge on this is Gwendolyn Walker. Um, and she has done some workshops for MTEA and elsewhere. So there's, and
And
as she has reminded us, that if you do not have a transitioning person now,
You
you
might in the future.
will in the future.
Yeah.
and
Now we're coming to
can
the
I just,
end. Okay,
yeah,
go
Carol,
ahead.
I
Go
just want
ahead.
to say something really quick because you did bring up hormones, and that's my deal. It's sometimes doctors will give women implants of testosterone to give them energy. Don't let a doctor do that to you because it will immediately lower your voice because that testosterone goes to your vocal folds and does all the bad stuff that I talked about. So it will permanently lower your voice, and there's no way that you can, even if you take it out, your voice is done. It's permanently lowered.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we've got 5 minutes. We're gonna do a round robin with the panel. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, we're so grateful that you were here today for this conversation and discussion about care of the speaking voice. Every now and then I do a few of these, so watch my YouTube channel and on Facebook. I want to thank Edry Means Weekly, Lori Hicks, Barbara DeMaio, Shonda Devine. Just a round robin, real quick. Any final thing that you would like to say, Idri?
Oh, me first. Oh
Yep.
gosh. Um, however you are using your voice, enjoy your voice and enjoy the different sounds that you can make with your voice, the healthy sounds that you can make with your voice, and reach out. Just because you may not be a singer, your voice, can be helped by a singing teacher. So reach out, enjoy, and just keep journeying on.
Okay, Shonda,
Let me unmute
you.
myself. I was muted. Okay. I just want to talk about how, or like to leave with how your voice is delicate. If you think about the folds are thinner than a sheet of paper, and they have to vibrate together. And if you're consistently clearing your throat, yelling, screaming, shouting, you're throwing these things together that are so delicate, they don't regenerate. They're the ones that you have, and that's it. So just now that you're, knowledgeable of how they work and how they play in our lives, just be a little bit more considerate of what you do with them. And also, ENTs, as I know we've talked about that, getting checked out. Try and see if your ENT has some experience, not to be divisive here, but singing, because a lot of the ENTs that are out, or that are present today, have the ones who have the experience with singing actually are able to help when it comes to a lot of vocal dysphonia. So just try that too. That's something I had to learn in undergrad when I got my nodules. All ENTs are not equal, so just be
Hmm.
cautious with that. And that's,
Yes, yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
I'm just going to put this out there. You can sing. Everybody can sing. There is no such thing as tone deaf. You think you can't match pitch because nobody's taught you how to match pitch with the thing called audiating. You hear it in your head and then you sing. And people that can't match pitch, they have to learn how to do that. So I tell my pedagogy students, if they ever tell somebody that they can't sing, I will come back from the grave and haunt them. Everybody, everybody should sing. So I know this is about speaking, but if you can get your singing voice together, it's going to help your
Oh
speaking
yeah.
voice as well.
Oh yes.
Lori.
Well, as a parishioner, I want to hear more good news and more of the gospel. So I want you all taking care of your voices so you can continue to spread God's word and heal this world. So please take care of your instruments. Please again do these exercises. Be aware of what you're doing so you can use that voice over and over and over again.
Okay, so I get the final word, I guess, because I'm the commentator. First of all, I want to thank everybody today for coming and sharing of their knowledge and expertise. These ladies are amazing, each one
You're
individual
amazing.
in their way, and I'm just so happy. This is an informational program that I do just to like spread the word and spread information. If you go to my YouTube channel, there is a presentation we did in November on Black, Indigenous, and people of persons of color opera companies, and some other interviews and whatnot I did. So subscribe to the channel. Someone's putting commercials on it. I'm not. It's not monetized. I'm not getting a dime from it. It's something that I do as a work of love. But I want to thank everyone. I'd like the panel just to stay. Everyone else, you can sign off now. Thank you so much for coming, and stay tuned and watch my website. Not my website, but my YouTube channel and Facebook for future panels. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank
for
you.
bringing
Thank
us
you,
together.
Carolyn. God bless.
Well, what I can do is put everybody in the waiting room. I have two other people. Let's see. There they go. One more gone. Okay, so all by ourselves. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what I'm gonna do, because it's easier now. Now listen, I do all this editing, right? And it takes a while. But I think what I'm gonna do is if I break it into sections, it'll be get more views that way. So people don't have to sit for like the 2 hours. Okay. So I'll break it into sections. It's gonna run as is. I like to like put in like transitions, and I'm not gonna do all that. Not this time. So give me about a week or so, because Dr. Meyer is like, you need to stop doing everything else except write your first three
Oh
chapters.
my goodness.
He's not wrong.
So I promised him by June 15th, when we start to reconvene for summer session, I will have chapters 1 through 3. I don't have anything else to do. So I'm going to work on that. Y'all keep me in prayer.
Off to Kathleen Bell.
And
Well-
I want to thank Lori for teaching me what a whoop is. I did not know that term.
Yes.
I invited some of my minister friends, and I didn't see any of them up here.
I
Oh,
have
I-
one in the audience. He doesn't.
Okay.
hoop, though.
I invited my minister, but he doesn't hoop and holler. So
Yeah, I'm Episcopalian. We don't hoop very much.
Lutheran.
Well, but like a lot of times, like with women, women preach. I don't know if you've heard. What's her Carolyn? What is her last name? She talk like this. She's a wonderful preacher, Carolyn Wright or Knight, Carolyn Knight, I think her name is. But that voice is like it's like baritone now, because I think a lot of the Black Baptist preachers, the women tend to make their voices lower to be more authoritative. I think because it's so misogynistic in the Baptist church sometimes.
And higher ed too.
Oh
There you
yeah.
go.
Don't get me started.
Hey, let's do a picture with all of us.
Oh yeah, screenshot.
Screenshot.
Yay.
Everybody smile. Hold on a second. I'll try it here. Oh man.
Pull mine up.
I got you.
Take that.
I'm gonna stop the
Up
recording.
there, Christine Brown.
I can't get her out.
I got
Well,
it.